name is Khusnul Khatimah R.
My name is Puspa Hasri Nusantara.
My name is Bela Adila.
My name is Genoveva Amaral dan Cruz.
My name is Rahmadinah.
Okay, before we talk about the Second Sino-Japanese War, we should know about the First Sino-Japanese War first. So, the First Sino-Japanese War can be happen because Japan wants to dominate the Manchuria Railroad for themselves. So, that's why the Chinese and Japanese has a really bad intention towards each other. Then, on the 7th of July 1937, when Japan tried to ask for the entry of the tiny walled town of Wonping using the Marco Polo Bridge, the Chinese garrison in the town refused to let Japanese soldiers enter it. Then there was a gunshot and two sides started to firing. The response of that accident are China refused to make any concession and Japan kept remaining silent to maintain their positions. So, in the conclusions, the Sino-Japanese War can be happen because of their national interest. Because China began their full-scale resistance to the Japan influence expansion in China. In order to do that, they should stop Japan to entering the Wonping.
The Second Sino-Japanese War was an armed conflict between the Republic of China and the Empire of Japan that occurred during the period 1937 until 1945. This conflict began with an incident on the Marco Polo Bridge in Beijing on July 7, 1937, which was considered to be the trigger for war. The parties involved were the Japanese Empire, led by Emperor Hirohito, against the Republic of China under the leadership of the nationalist Kuomintang Party as well as Chinese Communist Force under the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party. Both parties were also supported by alliances with external parties such as the Soviet Union, China, and Nazi Germany, Japan. The Second Sino-Japanese War began on July 7, 1937, when Japanese forces attacked China following an incident at the Marco Polo Bridge in Beijing. This conflict continued until 1945, when Japan surrendered after their defeat on World War II. Fighting in the Second Sino-Japanese War took place throughout China, covering the mainland as well as Hong Kong and Macau, which were the colonies of Britain and Portugal. Then colonies of the maintained battles took place in major cities such as Shanghai, Nanjing, Wuhan, and Chongqing. The Second Sino-Japanese War occurred because of Japan's expansionist ambition in East Asia, which wanted control over territories in China. This conflict was also triggered by imperialism policy and Japan's effort to obtain natural resources and export markets in China.
The relationship between Japan and China is dominated by trade, territorial struggles, and power expansion interests. Geographically, China and Japan are countries in the East Asia region with the East China Sea border. The desire to be equal to Western countries made the relationship between Japan and China change, especially after Japan carried out the Meiji Revolution and embraced the Hakko Ichiu. This was the background for the division of the two countries, which began in 1937. The conflict that occurred in the 20th century is recorded as the largest conflict in East Asian history. It lasted from 7th of July 1937 to 8th of September 1945. The war began with Japan's imperial policy to take over China's power in the political and military fields to maintain resources as a reserve of raw materials owned by China. The Second Sino-Japanese War began when the Chinese government refused to withdraw its troops from the Pinghan Railway from Peiping to Wuhan, which then resulted in the war expanding to various regions in China. This incident is known as the Marco Polo Bridge incident. In July 1937, Chinese military and political groups united in support of the nationalist government and Chiang Kai-shek to oppose Japanese policies. The communists, who had urged unity against the Japanese in 1935, pledged to support and put their army under the command of the Chinese government. However, Japan's military power was so much stronger that it managed to take control of several areas in China, especially the western part along the city of Hankou and most of railway lines. In July 1937, the Japanese regained control of Peiping and Tianjin. The Japanese managed to expel the Chinese army from the Shanghai area in mid-November 1937, and the capital city of Nanking collapsed in December 1937, and the capital was moved to Hankou. In 1939, China won victories over Changsha and Guangxi. With Japan's lines of communication into China's interior, the war became a stalemate as the Japanese were unable to deal with the Chinese communists in Shaanxi, who waged a campaign of sabotage and guerrilla warfare against the invaders. On 7th of December 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, which resulted in the United States declaration of war. Thus, China was assisted by the United States in transporting war materials through the Himalayas after Japan suffered defeat in Burma and closed the Burma Road. Japan launched another invasion in 1944 known as Operation Ichigo, which conquered Henan and Changsha. However, Chinese forces were not affected by the operation, and China continued its mission in Burma and built the Ledo Road connecting China with India. At the same time, China made its offensive in taking over West Hunan and Guangxi in South China. On the 2nd of September 1945, Japan surrendered, although it continued to occupy parts of China. However, the Allied forces continued to attack by launching atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, as well as the Soviet invasion of Manchuria, which was controlled by Japan. The remaining Japanese forces, except Manchuria, officially declared defeat on 9th of September 1945, which was witnessed by the International Military Tribunal held on 29th of April 1946. Then, the Cairo Conference was held on 22 until 26 November, where the World War II allies decided to restrain and punish Japanese aggression and return all the territories taken over by Japan from China, including Manchuria, Taiwan or Formosa, and Pescadores to China, expel Japan from the Korean Peninsula. After the war, China was recognized as the fifth permanent member of the United Nations Security Council.
And now I will explain the aftermath of the Second Sino-Japanese War. As we know, the Second Sino-Japanese War was a large-scale war between the Republic of China and the Empire of Japan. China's victory in the Second Sino-Japanese War had significant long-term impacts. Also, the war resulted in heavy losses for China, including loss of life, loss of economic, damage to infrastructure, via resistance to Japan's invasion demonstrated China's resilience and national spirit. Apart from that, this war also influenced political and military dynamics in East Asia. Because China is one of the big five countries along with the US, Russia, France, and England, it is not surprising that this war had many impacts.
As previously discussed, China also expressed economic losses due to this war. China suffered direct economic losses of more than 100 billion US dollar and indirect losses of 500 billion US dollar. In addition, more than 35 million Chinese soldiers and civilians died in the Second Sino-Japanese War, which lasted 8 years. This number estimated to be equivalent to almost 8% of China's total population in 1928. Meanwhile, Japan is thought to have lost 1.5 million troops during the Second Sino-Japanese War. And another impact that happened after the Second Sino-Japanese War are this war caused large casualties, including the Nanjing Massacre incident, where the Japanese killed thousands of people, and there are collaboration government between Kuomintang and Chinese Communist Party. And because of this war, Japanese economy exports to America decreasing by 40 to 50%, and Japan had to experience a decline in power and lost control over the territories it had once occupied. This war led Japan to return territories such as Taiwan or Formosa to China. And like I explained before, that because of this war, Japan had to experience decline power and lose control over territories it had once occupied. It is include of Indonesia. After the Sino-Japanese War, Indonesia already become a state with an independent state. But after this war, relationship between China's and Japan's also have a progress, such as in economic and political relation. China and Japan relation improved and become better, also more intensive.
Now I want to explain my conclusion about the Second Sino-Japanese. The Second Sino-Japanese War started on 7 July 1937 to 9 September 1945. This war was very dangerous because at the time, the Sino-Japanese War began with the Marco Polo Bridge incident. At the time, the Japanese counter army was training near the city of Weiping, China. And that someday, after the training was finished, one member of the Japanese troop went missing. And the Japanese started that the soldier had been kidnapped by Chinese troops. And on the same day, this incident escalated because Japanese soldiers shot at Marco Polo Chamba. This is what caused the outbreak of the Sino-Japanese War. However, Japan has never faced people who control the war government alone. But Japanese has also faced many countries such as the United States, England, France, and also the Netherlands. However, they were so strong because in just a short time they succeeded in conquering the entire east coast of China and also including its capital in Nesha. The Chinese military was quite weak, and on that very day they moved the center on the government to Hong Kong. And also from all corners of the world, the level of Chinese society began to fluctuate. Thank you.
Our critical opinion regarding the Second Sino-Japanese War.
Our criticism and opinion regarding this war is that the Second Sino-Japanese War began with the Japanese invasion of China for no apparent reason. This aggressive action by Japan caused great suffering to the Chinese people and caused widespread damage. And during the war, Japanese troops committed various war atrocities.
including mass slaughter, rape, and the use of chemical weapons. This represents a serious violation of the laws of war and human rights, and because of the involvement of international power, with China receiving support from the Allies, while Japan received support from the Axis. This shows the complexity of international relations at the time. Lastly, it is important to criticize this war as part of historical learning so that the past mistakes are not repeated in the future. Through a deep understanding of these events, we can build peace and cooperation between nations in the future.